Now the question is, when we say marketing orientation as a winning philosophy, we should be interested in how to make it work. So in terms of how do we implement the marketing concept, there are 4 interrelated steps in marketing that will help us in our quest to live the marketing concept or practice the marketing concept. Since we are talking about insights, we expect the first logical step is to undertake consumer research. I won't bore you here trying to explain to you what consumer research is. I think that it will be for the 3rd section of the course. So when I get there, I'll delve into the key issues on consumer research. But the starting point is that we need to do consumer research. Following from that, we expect businesses to undertake what we call market segmentation, because the typical market is made up of consumers with diverse needs or heterogeneous needs. And if we are to give meaning to the marketing concept, we need to recognize these differences, because a typical market, we have people with different tastes and preferences, characteristics, income levels, and all that. We cannot box all of them with one marketing strategy and so on. Media habits may be different and so on, literacy levels and so on and so forth. So we must necessarily do what we call market segmentation, which simply has to do with breaking down a heterogeneous market into a homogeneous set so that they can respond to a given marketing mix element. Of course, as you segment, you are likely to have several possible segments, but organizations have different strengths and weaknesses. They may have different objectives or missions. The target market that they intend to pursue may have different expectations and all that. So it's important that based on this multiple set of factors, the organization decide on which of these segments they intend to satisfy. In other words, all effort will be geared towards the segment that is selected. Again, we'll be talking about market segmentation in another section where I'll take you through the key issues there. There we'll be looking at, concurrently we'll be looking at market segmentation, targeting, and positioning. And of course, positioning has to do with, as consumers, we have expectations. So positioning simply has to do with creating a distinctive image in the minds of consumers, so that when they are buying product A or brand A, based on the positioning the companies has assumed, they know that this is the product or brand that will be used to satisfy a particular need or particular taste and preferences. So to implement the marketing, we need to do consumer research, market segmentation, targeting, and positioning. I'll be explaining this to you as we move along in subsequent sessions. Although the marketing concept is a winning philosophy, we are also arguing that it's good business for businesses to seek the entire welfare of the community or the society in which they operate. So these days we've stretched the marketing concept a step further by talking about societal marketing concept. That's why you see a lot of organizations pursuing what we call the corporate social responsibility and all that, because now we accept that it's good business to seek not only the welfare of consumers, but we need to also factor in the general well-being of society, so that we imbibe or we adopt practices that are seen as socially responsible, among other considerations. Now, just like when you go to the hospital and all that, a doctor who has been in service for some time will not assume that because he's been in medical practice for some time, he will use his discretion just by prescribing medicine and all that. A typical hospital scenario, they will ask you to go and do test, X-ray. A doctor will question you. What is the doctor trying to do? He's trying to elicit information which will enable him give you solution by way of medication, among other factors. The same way in marketing or in business, we also because consumers have diverse needs, we also elicit or undertake consumer research so that it will inform the deployment of our marketing mix. Because two different segments may have different expectations, and so on and so forth. The framework for which we are able to serve our target market is what we call the marketing mix. And typically we talk of either the 4P framework of product, price, promotion, place. And sometimes, especially in a service environment, we want to stretch this concept a bit further. So we also include other elements that we call people elements, the people element, the process, and of course the physical evidence. This may look simplistic, but it's not as simplistic as it appears, because these are major decision areas. When you take products, for instance, there are a lot of things that will have to go into products and so on and so on. Pricing issues, promotional issues. Place simply has to do with distribution. How do we ensure that we get our goods and services or ideas? Of course, you know, in marketing, when we say services or goods and services, it also means events, ideas, people, and so on, as in the case of political parties and all that. So this is briefly what we refer to as the marketing mix element, which is important in this regard because the deployment, a good deployment of the marketing mix must necessarily be informed by insight from our consumers, who we say are the most important thing, most important element in the scheme of things. You know, a typical organization is faced with other stakeholders. These days we talk of multiple stakeholders. We can talk of the business owners being investors. We can talk of the society at large. We can talk of government, because government provide a framework and we need to pay taxes to go. We can talk of the publics or media and so on. These are all stakeholders or entities that whose action or inaction can impact positively or negatively on our business. But of course, we are saying that notwithstanding the fact that we're paying attention to the consumer, we need to also recognize that we need to balance the interests of other stakeholders in our business decision making. All these things that we are talking about, when you look at the definition of marketing, the marketing concept, they all seem to stress on one thing: customer satisfaction. Because talking about win-win approach, is believed that once we are able to satisfy our customers or our target market, we benefit by way of customer retention. Because these days, like I said, no firm should practice the leaky bucket approach because of the nature of competition. It's more challenging to do business now. But for us to be able to satisfy customers, we need to understand what we mean by customer value. What is the customer seeking for in the exchange relationship? So I would define customer value in this regard as, our value is defined as the ratio between the customer's perceived benefits and the resources used to obtain those benefits. When the customers come to this exchange relationship, they come with expectation. Benefits by way of value for money, benefits in terms of time saving, benefits in terms of less psychological trauma, because there are a lot of complex goods when we buy, we expend a psychological effort. So this is an area that marketers can work on in their quest to create value for the customer, because they come with expectation, and these are the areas by which they expect to build value. We are saying that when we understand customer value, or we know the value that our target market is looking for, and we are able to produce that, it leads to customer satisfaction. And we know customer satisfaction, what does it mean? It simply means, customer satisfaction simply means the individual's perception of the performance of the product or service in relation to his or her expectation. Based on that advertisement we do, word of mouth that we see from other customers, promises made in advertisement and so on, salespeople and all that, build expectation of customers. So when they come to the exchange relationship, the satisfaction is dependent on their perceived performance of the product or service in relation to this expectation that they brought to the exchange relationship. And of course, you are saying that all things being equal, this can lead to customer retention, and there are several benefits for the firm by way of there will be repeat purchases. Organizations survive based on continuous patronage. So customer retention may lead to more products being bought. We are saying that loyal customers tend to be less price sensitive. In other words, they tend to stay with a firm that they are satisfied with, and they pay less attention to competitive offering and so on because they know what to expect. And of course, when you service a particular target market or customer for some time, over time it becomes less expensive to service them because they are educated over a period of time and all that. And of course, they spread positive word of mouth, and that can even be more persuasive than commercial advertising. There are several things that when we buy, we tend to rely on the opinion of our colleagues and so on, especially those we regard as knowledgeable about the product that we are interested in. So when we are able to do customer value, get the customer value dimension well, it will lead to customer satisfaction, and then eventually may lead to retention and all that. So the whole idea is to build successful relationship, and to build successful relationship, these three components are important. They relate to each other, and this is the idea of creating relationship through customer value and satisfaction. Now, talking about the usefulness of consumer behavior, in general terms, businesses, organizations, profit-making entities enter business because they want to make profit by satisfying customers. So a good understanding of consumer behavior is useful broadly in terms of helping us achieve organizational goals. But in more specific terms, we can also talk of four main ways in which knowledge of consumer behavior is used. One, issue of strategy, marketing strategy, is also applicable by way of formulating regulatory policies. When we talk of the regulatory bodies we have, they also deal with consumers or target market. They can only do this when they have good understanding of the consumer decision-making process, of the psychological influences on consumers and so on. This will help them come up with the right policies and all that. Of course, we also talk of social market. We are saying that social marketers can use knowledge of consumer behavior to bring about the needed or desired behavioral changes among members of the public. What do social marketers do? They are mostly interested in bringing about behavioral change. The issue of alcoholism, drink driving, teenage pregnancy and all that. Social marketers are interested in these social issues. And for them to be able to achieve the desired behavioral changes, they also need to understand the behavior of consumers or the public, so to speak. As students, when we study consumer behavior, good appreciation of consumer behavior theories and principles will make us more informed in terms of taking consumption-related decisions. We are able to understand why businesses or marketers undertake certain practices and so on and so forth. And it makes us informed decision makers. This whole course, like I said, when you take a typical consumer, a consumer is influenced by multiple set of factors. But of course, we cannot touch on all the factors that influence consumer behavior. So as you see this model here, there are two broad areas that we are concerned with in the entire consumer behavior course. We are talking about the psychological field, where we talk of motivation, perception, learning, personality, attitude, and all that. These are of a personal nature. These factors are of personal nature and they tend to influence the individual consumer. And again, like I said, because no consumer is an island, we also expect that he will be influenced by his socio-cultural environment. So when we look at the boxes up there, the one on the right talks about the socio-cultural environment. I mean, issue of family, social class, and all that. It also influences the specific actions we take as consumers. The box to the left has to do with the marketing mix element. These are factors that the business or the marketer uses or use to influence or to elicit the desired responses or actions from the target market. And then you look at the consumer decision making process here. It's made up of 5 interrelated decision areas. We say that typical consumer decision making process must necessarily start with need recognition. Behavior is goal-driven. So it's an important starting point for marketers trying to understand consumer needs and so on. So you see the arrow showing to the right means that all these factors can influence consumer need recognition. And whether being it a high involvement purchase decision or low involvement purchase decision, consumers in trying to minimize perceived risks and all that tend to search for information, and this information search can either be internal or external or both, or with a view to reducing perceived risks that is associated with purchase and consumption related decision making. Of course, like I was saying, again, there are several alternatives, and the consumer will want to maximize satisfaction, and therefore we want to evaluate the various alternatives in relation to this decision making. So the third step in the consumer decision making process has to do with evaluation of alternatives. This is an area we can discuss extensively and all that, because there are key issues that we need to note as marketers and all that. Need recognition, what are the issues that we should be concerned about as marketers? And of course, it may lead, it's not always a straight kind of flow chart. I mean, the whole process may end from at pre-purchase search for information or evaluation of alternatives. The consumer may drop out. But if he decides to go on, he may move on to do purchase. And here too, we should be interested in what type of purchase, is it trial purchase, repeat purchase. Again, it's also a decision area, so we'll be interested in all the issues, what, how, when, and so on and so forth, because all this information is important in terms of devising marketing strategy or marketing mix element. And of course, we are saying that the decision-making process should not end with that purchase, because after purchase, consumers continue to evaluate the brands or the services that they patronize. And it could either be satisfaction or dissatisfaction. They may suffer what we call the post-purchase cognitive dissonance, which can be very traumatic and stressful and so on. So good businesses will want to keep relationship so that even post-purchase, they continue to assure consumers, continue to provide warranties among other factors or other tools, just to ensure that they don't suffer post-purchase cognitive dissonance. Of course, satisfied consumers will also be of benefit to the organization by way of repeat purchase and so on and so forth. So basically, this model will shape our discussion of consumer behavior as we proceed with subsequent sessions. Thank you. We've come to the end of the first session. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.